Hello, good morning and good evening, everyone. This is Srirama Akella here, Director of Product Management, and have been associated with OpenText for more than 15 years now. I'm currently leading a core case product from a strategy and from a feature design point of view. Core case is one of our next generation SaaS solutions around case management application. With that brief intro, I would like to welcome you all to this session, which is all about leveraging our cloud content platform APIs within business processes, right? With that brief intro, let's quickly get started with our session. But before that, let's try to understand what exactly the primary goal of this session and the topic that we are trying to target for today's session. Okay, so it's all about learning how organizations can unleash the power of core content APIs beyond the conventional and standard document management capabilities, like, not just about uploading or downloading a document, but then the content platform now has been matured in a way that it provides several other critical services API that would really drive your company's business processes more efficiently. And as part of this introduction, we are going to specially look at two APIs, which is Business Workspace and the Business Object APIs. Okay, and we will also try to illustrate all of this using real-time business scenarios and also our own core products. One is like core case, which I've just mentioned, and the other one is core content, which is our next generation content platform. So we'll see how we have really integrated these two products together with the power of the APIs that are exposed by this content platform. Okay. Moving on, just before jumping into the solutioning part, I would like to really emphasize on the problem statement, right? So let's look at this typical problem statement within HR line of business, right? So where we see that HR personnel most often process several employee lifecycle events, right? So when it comes to employee lifecycle events, the first thing that comes to our mind is onboarding process and an offboarding process. That's where the whole the journey of an employee starts and terminates within an organization, which are more of a streamlined processes. But we know that within this journey, there are several ad hoc requests and processes that are usually requested either by employees or their hiring managers or the HR department. Like for instance, interdepartment transfers. There's a contract renewal of an employee, or there is a benefit enrollment from an employee, tuition reimbursement. Okay, grievance addressal. There are several other processes that you can think about that would come, or that any employee would come across and the HR would come across for each of these employee. As a result, we see that HR are often forced to use multiple solutions. Like for instance, they use leading applications like SAP, SuccessFactors in order to store their master data like employee details. And then similarly, they might also adopt other solutions like case management, business process management applications, or any other manual processes in order to accommodate these day-to-day requests and manage them more efficiently within the HR personnel, right? As a result, they are again challenged with some gaps and definitely several limitations. Okay, so let's look at what they are, right? For instance, gaining access to an employee master record. While we try to make best use of each applications in order to get our job done, it's really always complex to get access to the centralized master record. And it is just not accessing the master record, but you also would like to have access to the related documents of that particular employee. For instance, when you are processing the contract renewal, you may want to access the employee payroll information or payload records, right? So that's one of the primary challenge, because not every solution would be integrated into the leading applications or some other application where this master data is stored or the related documents reside. Similarly, the fragmentation of an information, that is another important dimension, because every process would either demand for certain employee documents or would end up generating certain documents. For instance, contract renewal would produce its own contracts, right? A new contract that has to be renewed. Interdepartment transfers might have some supporting documents. So every process would contribute to more and more information, which could eventually be scattered and fragmented in the content repository. And then finally, the other interesting problem is assuring an accurate retention policy, okay, for an employee record. So imagine when an employee departs the organization, it's important that over a period of time we retain and then eventually we archive and dispose these particular documents. But we just have seen that there are several processes and there are several employee related documents that have been generated, which is really scattered. Though let's say organization has adopted a digitization and have centralized all the content, they are still not linked. So it is not possible to either automate or to even go manually, collect all these documents and then archive them, right? So these are some typical challenges that we see, in this kind of scenario. And when we within OpenText, when we were building Core Case, which is a no-code tool that enables organizations to model business processes, okay, to meet exactly the requirements like this. We wanted to address these challenges, and then we thought, okay, I mean, should we start integrating again with these leading applications in order to get the master employee data and all the related documents? For related documents, okay, we integrate with our own content platform. Is this good enough? Then we thought, this is all sounding quite redundant because our cloud content platform already integrates with this ecosystem, whether it is SAP, SuccessFactors, Salesforce. Right, encapsulate all the required information. So why don't we go capitalize on that instead of really directly integrating with these leading applications, which is really not scalable, right? So and then that's exactly where we started looking at our content platform beyond content repository or a document repository to see how it really address these complex challenges, right? So now, before getting into how we have addressed, okay, let's understand the two critical APIs which our core content and content platform API provides, which is like almost the backbone of this whole solution. Okay, so they are business object and business workspace. Okay. So before we try to put them to the use, let's understand what each service is all about. Okay, to start with, the business object. Business object is, as you could make out by the name, it's a representation of a real life entity. Like real life entity could be an employee, as in this case, or in our example, or it could be a customer, it could be a vendor, dealer, account, whatever. It stores all the metadata with respect to that particular entity. For instance, all the employee related data, employee name, employee email, phone number, address, the job title, designation, and then probably the department and several other information, right? And the beauty of this business object is this would be automatically synced from the leading application whenever the data is propagated into this BO. That makes this BO independently accessible and also makes it agnostic to the leading application. The kind of APIs that are available around the BO, one can really access this particular object independent of the leading app from where this BO has been originated. And then it also integrates with the business workspace. But what is business workspace? Let's understand that, right? So a business workspace, look at it as just a container to manage all the unstructured content of let's say an employee records. You would like to manage all the employee records in one container. Okay, this container is the one where you can really manage all that data because it comes with a predefined folder structure. If you desire to, for instance, I would like to classify my documents into educational certificates, experience certificates, okay, and then other payroll confidential documents. And obviously you can apply role-based permission so that only authorized person can access the required files. Okay. And then And this will really make every employee workspace or folder workspace look very consistent. So every time I go into an employee workspace as an HR, I can seamlessly navigate to the folder structure in order to get the information I am looking at, because every employee is represented very consistently within my content workspace. And then finally, the magic comes when this workspace is actually integrated into the business object or linked into the business object, because that's where we are marrying the two objects and making it one composite entity by bringing the structured and the unstructured data into one single object. Okay. So that's a two the critical services that I would like to introduce, and then which we are going to leverage in our solution, right? So now let's see how this data really flows across the leading applications, providing a seamless access to the required information across this different applications, right? So let's look at this particular business scenario. Okay. So imagine within your leading HR application, like SAP or a success factor, HR personnel creates a new employee record by providing all the employee information, because that's a master system where they actually enter all the information, whether it is employee name, date of joining, and all that, right? So once an employee record is punched into the leading application, there is an API that is invoked within the core content, and then core content would then create the business object by encapsulating all the master data about that particular employee into the BO, yeah, which is what we just discussed, right? And then it will also create a workspace, a dedicated workspace for this particular employee, and then binds that into this particular business object. Okay. Now, the leading application, whenever there is a master data that is updated, that is propagated into this employee business object and the workspace. Now, the workspace can be easily embedded into the leading application and the core content, so that any content, any files that are placed within this workspace would be shared across this particular application. Okay, so now this in place. Okay, let's see how within the business processes we can leverage this information. So come to the core case. Let's say, core case is the business process application, which in this case, HR is making use to onboard the employee with the rest of the formalities, like, logistics to facilities to collecting all the subsequent documents. They are making use of core case so that they can systematically complete all the steps. Okay. As a result, you see when HR opens a case within the solution, they try to look for an employee for whom they would like to initiate this onboard process. As a result of that, the entire business object and workspace is now embedded into the case. So all the master data now is available in the business process, so that you have the entire employee information at your disposal, and even the workspace is now embedded into core case so that you can start collaborating. Okay, um, that's it. That's how you really collaborate around the centralized workspace. I would also like to touch upon certain advanced use case, which is all about linking the document. So imagine you also have a contract renewal, okay, for an employee. When I initiate a contract renewal employee, I may want to manage all my contract related documents in a separate workspace, not within the employee workspace, which is absolutely fine. So though the process is being executed in isolation, the information is stored in an isolation. You see that how the workspace can be linked to the master workspace, so that you can always navigate from a particular contract to the respective employee and vice versa. This is how you really link the workspaces together, okay, and make sure you are able to seamlessly access them. Okay. So that's about the data flow across the different leading applications and the power of combining the business object and business workspace. Okay. Now, in the interest of time, whatever we have seen, I would just like to show you very quickly a core case demo to see how we can really see this in action, right? So let me switch the screen, and then This is my core case management application. Let me just refresh my screen here to bring the application back. Okay, so here is my core case application. Okay, now and then, as I said, I would like to initiate my onboarding process for a specific employee. But before that, let me just show you the core content platform where an employee object is already persisted. So this is the employee workspace where you see there is an employee one, EMP1, and all their documents are managed. Okay, this is the workspace that I was referring to. And you see, this is the business object where it has all the employee information. So for instance, the employee name is Henry Tang. This is a job title, and you can find all other information. So this is how an employee is related to the workspace, and this makes it the complete, composite entity about of the employee. Okay, so now when I from within the case management, let's say I would like to initiate an employee onboarding process, right? And I would like to, let's say, initiate onboard Henry. Okay, so for simplicity, let me just populate that. Now, when I go into the employee, okay, I see that I can get a list of all the employees here, and you see employee one, Henry, lead software. So I can also, get some information. Soon I select a particular employee, I can get to see the entire information about that particular employee, not just about the title, but I can load the entire employee details. Okay, so let me assign this to myself and then start initiating this particular case. Now, as a quick wind up, so if you see what I have done is I've tried to fetch all the business objects, which is in this case all the employee records. And the moment I could select one of the employee, I could access all the information about the employee, right? Even while searching and once the employee is embedded. So which means employee record is now available within your case process, and I can start applying any of the rules as if this entire employee master data is available within my case, but without storing that in my case management solution. That's one part, but then I also would like to access the employee documents, right? I don't want to really again start collecting documents in isolation. Okay, so here is where you see I have all the case documents. The same employee one workspace is also loaded into case. So which means any document that you are going to update here, okay, would also be available in the same workspace. So that's where you are really bringing both workspace and the employee record into your case. So that's one of the case where we have seen how you can collaborate on the same workspace. There is other use case as well, which we just discussed on the contract, right? So no, for the contract, I would like to have a different way of managing. Let's say this is my contract, and I would like to store all my documents which related to contract, okay, in a separate folders, right? So here it is about the contract for this guy. So I'm storing it in a separate folder or a workspace, but then I can still load employee workspace into the context of the employee. So if on need basis, you can also access the employee records as a read-only data into this particular employee while processing the contract. Okay. As a result, you see that when you go into this particular core content, there is a contract workspace that is created. Okay, and not only that, this is linked to the employee to which this particular contract belongs to. You see here, this is an employee 6, and then what is that employee? Employee is Skyom. So you can pretty much link to this particular employee, and you can also open up this particular employee contract. You see, and then vice versa. Going into that particular employee, you can also spot the contracts, okay, that are related to this particular employee. So this is a very important bidirectional linking that you established between two workspaces, though the processes are executed in isolation. Okay, so that's a quick demo that I wanted to really show in this case to demonstrate whatever the business scenario we just saw in the PPT. Okay. With that, I would like to quickly conclude with some key takeaways. The most important thing is like the holistic view of each employee, for that matter, any entity, and how you can encapsulate both the metadata and the related documents into a single user interface, and then have this composite entity made available everywhere. Okay, and we have also seen how important it is to bring the context into the content. For instance, how you brought the employee master data into the content and other applications, and similarly the content is like now available seamlessly within that particular leading application. So they are always married to each other, right? And then finally, how it has all enabled a seamless collaboration and consolidation of the content across the apps. It is not about just collaborating or consolidating the content within your own applications or like, core set of products or open text products. You are now able to seamlessly integrate, or collaborate across different applications using the APIs provided. And then finally, with the linking of these workspaces, you have seen how easy it can be managing the records and then having the retention policy, because all this information is linked to each other, right? Yeah, that's with that, I think, I would like to just make one closing note that, with all these features and functions together, contributing towards, uh, the fueling of your business processes. Okay, with the power of the content platform APIs that are much more than the conventional document management capabilities. That's the most crux of this whole thing. The document management APIs are not just confined to upload or downloading the documents, but it has a potential beyond what a traditional document management APIs would do. Okay. That's it. With that, I would like to end this session, and I would take this opportunity once again to thank one and all for your time. I hope you all like this session. Thank you very much.